historic zoning. I'll have this preamble. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes.
It is on.
It is on. Sorry. Is that better? So, can you hear me in the back? Okay, great. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County vis a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. So I hereby call this meeting to order. And Robin, do we have a presentation of leadership recognition?
We do not. That's one of the things that'll come off the agenda.
Okay. So the next item is the adoption of July 11th and 19th, 2023 minutes. Do I hear either changes or a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by
Second.
Commissioner Johnson. Second by Commissioner Cotton. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are hereby approved. For the adoption of the agenda, Robin?
So number one, the presentation of leadership recognition is not on this agenda. Number 9, which is 1431 Shelton, has been removed from consent, but will be heard at the end of the meeting. 1013 Montrose, 1504 Dallas, 4406 Nebraska, and 2500 C West Linden Avenue are off the agenda because notification requirements were not met. 1710 Primrose Avenue and 2410 9th Avenue South are off because they revised to obtain administrative approval. And 2217 Lindell is a request to defer. So that's items 1, 9, 11, 12, 13, 18, 23, 24, and 25 that won't be heard with the exception of 9, which will be heard at the end.
Okay. Okay, great. So do we need a motion for adoption of the revised agenda? Okay, so do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the revised agenda.
Commissioner Cotton, second. Second by Commissioner Williams. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Do we have any council member presentations? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on. Consent agenda?
Alyssa, do you have the? Sorry about that. All right. Okay. As noticed to the public, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. So I'm going to read through these. If you would like it removed from the consent agenda and to be presented, please raise your hand, so we can make sure to remove those. All right. So the first item is 1800 Ordway Place, new construction of an addition. 1206 Gartland Avenue, new construction of an outbuilding with a setback determination. 200 South 11th Street, new construction of an addition and outbuilding. 1431 Shelton has been removed from the consent agenda and will be presented at the end of the meeting. 901 Bradford Avenue, new construction of an addition and outbuilding. All right, 1013 Montrose has been removed, as well as 1504 Dallas Avenue. 1710 Primrose Avenue has also been removed. 411 Broadway signage. 3504 Richland Avenue, new construction of an addition with a setback determination. And 100 Lauderdale Road, new construction of an addition. So staff has reviewed all of these and recommends approval of the items with their applicable conditions, finding them to meet their respective design guidelines.
Not used to the running the meetings. So do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
You stayed in here if you need to.
You did, but you just flood your
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Sure, for council members, could we go back to councilmember comments? Give her an opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. We are glad you're here and look forward to your comments.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I came screaming in here through traffic, so my fault for being a little bit late. I'm here to talk on the case for 1431 Shelton Ivy Hall. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I'm sorry, I don't know the number. Yep. Item 9, it sounds like. So that is a great historic building in the neighborhood. This case is for a dadu that has an apartment in it. And this is just, although you don't manage uses, this is my one opportunity on the record to make sure that the public understands that short-term rentals are not allowed in this. And so they are going to be tearing down the existing dadu and replacing it with a new dadu that will have an apartment in it. I have spoken with the applicant and they are aware of that restriction, and so wanted to just make sure that folks in the public understand that I am not supportive of a short-term rental there, nor are they planning to do that. Other than that, I think that the plans meet your criteria, and I think that we'll find it to be an acceptable remodel of our new structure on the property. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Thanks for your service. Okay.
All right, so the first and only violation today is at 2623 Ashwood Avenue. This is a non-contributing home in the Hillsborough West End Conservation Zoning Overlay. Back in December of 2022, the commission approved a rear addition that was reconfiguring the rear addition that was constructed in 1989 prior to the building's admission to the overlay. Back in July, staff was notified that work had begun. At this time, no inspections had been called in. So as constructed, the addition was constructed about 4.5 feet taller than the main house, but as approved, it was supposed to go no taller. Based on conversations with the contractor, it sounded like alterations were made in the field to include increasing the foundation height, increasing the ceiling height, among other adjustments. These alterations were not brought to staff, so they were not reviewed. And again, no inspections had been called in up to this point. The applicant has provided corrective plans. They are proposing to reduce the height of the addition as constructed down to be no more than 2 feet taller than the main house. Obviously, the biggest change is that 2 feet. Staff does find that this is appropriate, given that the home is not contributing, given that the portion that's going taller is put off the original roof, and given that the structure meets the requirement for a ridge raise if it had been requested. The commission has also approved additions to go 2 feet taller behind historic homes. There are other alterations that were made for this plan to include changes to the roof pitch, changes to the rear dormer, and among other things. Staff finds that all these alterations do meet the guidelines as well. So with that, staff recommends approval of the proposed corrective plan for the addition at 2623 Ashworth Avenue, finding that it meets all those guidelines posted on the screen. So do you have any questions? Or good? I think the applicant may be here.
Is the applicant here?
You want to come and speak?
Okay,
He's good.
good. Open public hearing. Are there anyone wishing to speak for or against this project? Seeing none, close public hearing. Comments? Motion?
Well, I think demolition and violation is the two most items we don't enjoy hearing, but with that, working with the staff and with the corrected plan, it seems like it's a very straightforward. So therefore, if no other commissioner has any comment, I move to accept 2623 Ashwood Avenue, accept staff recommendation and approve the plan as presented.
Is there a second? Second from Beth. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That carries. Okay. 818 South Douglas.
The next case is 818 South Douglas Avenue. The application is to construct a new attached garage rear addition that extends wider than the historic house. The house at 818 South Douglas Avenue is a circa 1920 side gable bungalow style house that contributes to the historic character of the Waverly Belmont Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The proposed addition meets all base zoning setbacks. The proposed addition extends wider than the historic house by 6 feet. Staff finds the wider extension does not meet the design guidelines. Staff also finds that a wider extension on this corner lot will further intrude on the historic house at 2025 Beach Avenue, directly behind the house at 818 South Douglas Avenue. On this slide, that house is indicated by the red arrow there. The house already has infill to the opposite side, and that infill is outside of the overlay. The infill projects forward of the house, and this infill is indicated by the red arrow on this slide. The proposed wider addition would project forward of the front setback of the house directly behind. However, with an addition that does not extend wider than the existing house at 818 South Douglas Avenue, the setback of the addition from Beach would more closely align with the front setback of the house directly behind. The drawings indicate an inset from the rear corner of the historic house on the Beach Avenue side and an inset on the interior side that extends back for the full depth of the addition. Staff finds that the inset on the interior side of the house is appropriate. However, staff finds that the inset on the Beach Avenue side should extend back at least 2 feet before stepping back out. The proposed addition includes an attached garage. There is no historic evidence of attached garages in this overlay, and the proposed garage is not located at the basement level. So the proposed attached garage would typically not meet the design guidelines. However, given the historic house directly behind, staff finds an attached garage on this lot could be appropriate, since an attached garage would provide more separation from the house directly behind than a fully detached outbuilding would. Staff finds an attached garage should only be considered if fully located behind the historic house at 818 South Douglas, thereby not projecting forward of the front setback directly behind. The applicant intends to change a window to a door on the east elevation of the historic house and slightly change the window dimensions of the window just beyond on that same elevation. Staff finds these alterations meet the design guidelines. The applicant also proposes removal of the non-historic side door covering and construction of a new side stoop and bracketed roof that covers the existing door and the added door. And staff finds all of this meets the design guidelines. Staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions shown on the screen. 3 and 4 are just the standard conditions, and 1 and 2 are a little more specific for this project. The one about the addition not extending wider is number 1, and then 2 regarding the inset. And with those conditions, staff finds the project meets the design guidelines. Happy to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Good. Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks.
Is the applicant here? Wish to speak? Okay, come on forward. Please state your name and address when you go to the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Hillis. My address is 1811 Blair Boulevard. I'm the owner of this property. I purchased it in August of 2004, so I've owned it exactly 19 years. Throughout that time, it's been operated as a residential rental property, but I have been actively involved in maintaining and improving that property ever since I purchased it. So I become familiar with the neighbors and the neighborhood, and when I started aging and realizing I needed a smaller house and a smaller yard and especially fewer stairs, this seemed like a logical place for me to go to create a new home for the remainder of my life, hopefully. So I've been working with an architectural designer. Eric is here with me, and he will make the primary presentation. But I just wanted to make a couple of comments and let you know that I've always been a responsible neighbor in that neighborhood, and I intend to continue to be that. We worked with due diligence to create a plan that I believe substantially meets historic guidelines. They're only, I suppose this is Joseph. We've been working with him quite a bit. With just a couple of variances, I believe the plan we have complies with the guidelines. And so I'm asking for your approval today for these variances just so I can have a functional garage that gives me good accessibility, the space that I need, so that as I move on in age, I'll have an accessible garage that I can get in and out of and that will serve my needs. I specifically wanted to thank Joseph for shepherding us through this review process. I've never gone through this before, and just wanted everyone to know that he has been unfailingly helpful and patient and clear and responsive, and I thank him for that. Thank you.
You have just under 8 minutes. If you'd like to reserve 2 of those for rebuttal, if there is public opinion, you can do that.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Eric Malo. I live at 1701 Stewart Place, 37203. I'm the architectural designer on this project. And again, thank you, Joseph, for your help in getting us to this point. Thank you to the commission and the rest of the staff as well for considering the project. As Ruth had mentioned, we've worked closely with staff and made significant adjustments and revisions throughout the design process to get to where we are. I have some images here. Can I pass out copies? These are from Metro's property assessor record card for the property. This shows Beach Avenue, which is similar to the photos that Joseph showed, addressing the setback of the other properties. And to the main point of the addition not extending wider than a historic house, in the guidelines, there are a series of requirements where extending wider is allowable. And we studied those throughout the process and have tried to meet a number of those. And where we couldn't, that's what suggested that we make the addition wider. This photo shows the other properties on Beach Avenue and the setbacks that they have. As already indicated, the historic house immediately behind has a deeper setback, but then many of the newer constructed infill townhomes are very close to the street. So when we're comparing our addition to the majority of the street, we think it's very much in keeping with what has been built. And perhaps for clarification, the house behind is historic in nature, but to our understanding, it's not within the overlay. And I don't know if that's a critical point or not, but we believe it's not within the overlay. Ruth's house is at the corner of the overlay, both on Beach and Douglas, I believe. And so it's adjacent to many properties that are not of similar character. Apartment buildings, condos across the street, townhomes down Beach Avenue. And so comparing her property to one historic home that is not within the overlay seems less relevant than comparing it to the majority of properties on the street. I'll look at the requirements for rear additions that are wider, and in the report it addressed some of these that we do not meet, such as a shallower lot. The lots here, including Ruth's, the front is a 50-foot lot, but the rear is wider, 70 feet, I believe, and that may be typical, but it also creates an odd geometry of where the lot is not rectangular. And so we're trying to use that geometry, especially along Beach Avenue, that the addition can be wider, shifted to one side. And in light of that, the fourth point, I think, about the historic building shifted greatly to one side. It's not when viewed from the front, but when viewed from the rear, it sits predominantly to one side, just due to the pie-shaped geometry of the lot. The project does not include a side addition to the historic building. We do not, if I understand the language of that correctly. We simply have rear additions, and this rear addition extends wider. The eaves and ridges do not exceed the main corresponding elements of the historic building. We align them with the eaves with the historic home, and the ridge is significantly lower than the historic home. The portion that extends wider does not exceed 1 story. Again, as a roof line, it's a single-story roof line. We are proposing space within that roof line, which my understanding is that's then considered a 1.5 story. But we did not go to a 2-story addition. And we do not create a front parking pad. And so we feel like we meet a number of those requirements within the guidelines. Point 2, the inset from the Beach Avenue side, rear corner of the house. Our understanding of the guidelines was that since this is a 1-story roof line, we only needed to step in 1 foot. In going back and forth with Joseph, he clarified that you preferred 2 feet. We didn't change the plans. We tried to respect both corners of the home with the addition on both the left and right rear, stepping in 1 foot and providing changes to, given the parameters of the lot and a modern car, the size of a modern car, and trying to fit that into a garage, we've created a modest-sized garage addition to meet Ruth's needs. Anything smaller than that would start to pinch on the requirements of parking a car in a garage. 3 and 4, I think, are more specifics that will be addressed as the project moves forward, to my understanding. And we'll reserve time that we can for rebuttal if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Are there people that wish to speak on this project? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
I'm Wayne Morris. I'm at 1603 Linden Avenue, a few blocks away in Belmont. I own the house next door at 1820 South Douglas, which I've impeccably maintained as a rental for 25 years. Ruth's property is right beside mine. She's had it 19 years, and her property has been consistently maintained relative to mine, as well as the other 2 neighbors in that very short block. I was the one that first lobbied to get that area into conservation overlay, so I'm very sensitive about maintaining the historic integrity of the neighborhood. And because all of the houses or properties, well, there are no houses on Beach, there's just that one house, again, not conforming, not in the historic overlay, and everything else down that block are townhomes, condos that sit all the way on the front of the street. Anything that Ruth does, I can tell you, is going to be outstanding, and she's going to be extremely meticulous. So we were very excited when we learned that she was going to be moving in that house, and the neighbors on the other side of my rental, they too are excited about it. So we would highly encourage you to please approve whatever they have recommended, because there seems to be there's definitely no objection of anyone in that historic area. And since I founded that neighborhood association, and know all those neighbors, they would have called me right away. So I think for what that's worth, I would urge you to approve it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this project? Public hearing is closed then. Commissioners, discussion?
I have a question for the applicant, maybe for the designer. It seems that the addition is shifted to one side of the house, yet there's room on the interior side where if it were shifted directly behind the house, it would come within all of the guidelines about rear additions. Can you explain why it's been shifted? It may be a setback issue. If you could address that, please.
If we look at the plan here, we did study that, and I think it comes down to the practicality of the garage addition, the needs of Ruth on living in the interior space. So the rear property line is angled, and so the setback therefore is angled. So it gets tighter as it gets to that back left corner. So the further into that corner we push it, the smaller the garage addition needs to be. That with combined at the right-hand corner, if we're doing the insets, those two parameters really pinch the size of the garage. It also, from a functional standpoint, interior of the house, it restricts that rear left corner of the home for access to the exterior. This allows for an access from the interior of the home out that side door to the backyard, which is just a practical, functional point for accessing the backyard for use. Otherwise, you're shutting off the entire backyard, any space left for practical use, and functionality of getting to the alley, for example, as well from interior spaces like the kitchen or bedroom to take trash out to the alley to access that yard for maintenance and use. So again, it's a practical standpoint. Furthermore, if the garage were to shift down, if you see the location of the stairs with the geometry of a garage and the dormers that are allowed and the setbacks and the dormers and head height and things like that, in order to get the stairs up to that usable space above the garage, it would totally reconfigure the stairs, which would make the whole interior layout much more difficult. So really, it's a practical standpoint from all of those parameters pinching the,
I guess just a couple other thoughts I'll share. I appreciate Joseph working with the applicant, and I agree mostly with your report and recommendation, especially that the willingness to compromise on this being an attached to car garage, which we don't often approve in our districts. I think it makes sense for this lot. I know that we typically hew pretty closely to the guidelines for additions that step wider than the historic house. So I'm not sure. I can understand all the practical reasons why they're asking for this. So I'd be interested to hear other commissioners' opinions on how we should decide this one in light of previous cases like this that we've seen.
Well, I do appreciate the background information, and I think I would be hesitant to consider variance if this house is located in the center of the historic zoning overlay. But interestingly, this house is literally edge of the historic overlay, and it's corner and surrounded by new development. And also this guideline states generally the rear addition should not be wider unless meets 9 listed condition. And if you literally interpret that condition, yes, it may not meet. But if you look at the context of the lot size, because this lot front is narrower but goes to pie shape and wider towards Beach Street. So therefore, it is rather unusual shape. So considering those two elements, one, parcel is located literally edge of the overlay. Two, the lot is unusual shape. So I think we can overlook that condition. And I think we can, in my opinion, it will be fine to give variance. And especially all other design element, height, material and everything meets condition. Only condition we are discussing is slightly wider. And I think attached garage is not typical on that situation, but I think, staff did a really great job to transition with the house behind it, property behind it. So instead of having additional 20 feet and, separation, by accepting attached garage, give more smooth transition and enough room for adjacent property. So I think overall this plan works with that particular location. So therefore, I am in favor of overlooking and accepting applicant request. I'd be interested in the commissioner's opinion as well.
Other comments, commissioners?
I tend to be a rule follower, but I would like some other input. I think that's a compelling argument that Commissioner Johnson made. And I'm always fearful of setting precedent, but I would like to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Commissioner Hill?
Well, this is certainly a tough case because we don't want to set precedent. But we have given these kinds of circumstances before, like the alley's too close, whatever. We have agreed to being a little more lenient in these cases. And so I would tend to agree with Commissioner Johnson on this matter.
I guess I'm open to the exception as well. I'm always scared about precedent because that's kind of what we generally stand by. But I am hesitant to say we're making an exception because it's on the edge of a overlay. Because I live on I'm the last house on the edge of an overlay. And I don't think that should really be a consideration because even though we're on the edge, those houses deserve the same, protection as houses in the middle. But due to the odd lot size, I can see a potential exception.
So, Commissioner Johnson, would you like to propose a motion?
I move to approve 818 South Douglas Avenue with condition except condition number 1. I think that's it. And with all other conditions. Would that be clear enough?
I'll second the motion.
Does that work with 2? Does it still work? Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? All opposed? On 128 Second Avenue North.
The next case is 128 Second Avenue North. The application is for a projecting sign and a shingle sign on the Second Avenue elevation and a painted sign on the First Avenue elevation. The Hooper Building, located at 128 Second Avenue North, was constructed in 1924 and contributes to the Second Avenue Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. The building is 3 stories tall facing Second Avenue and 4 stories tall on First Avenue due to the change in grade. A preservation permit was issued administratively in June of 2023 for the refacing of the existing marquee sign and for a new painted sign on the First Avenue elevation. The existing marquee sign counts toward the building's allotment for projecting signage. With the existing marquee sign, staff finds that the proposed projecting sign on the Second Avenue facade exceeds the maximum allotment for projecting signage on this facade. The proposed projecting sign also exceeds the maximum height allowed for projecting signage and the maximum projecting width allowed for projecting signage. The guidelines state that the average spacing of projecting signage from the facade shall be at least 1 foot. The current proposal also does not have this 1 foot spacing. The proposed projecting sign also projects above the window sills of the 3rd story and covers some of the existing architectural detailing above and between the 3rd story windows, which does not meet the design guidelines. The guidelines state that a projecting sign must be located below the window sills of the 3rd story and must not cover architectural details. The projecting sign includes internal illumination for the edges of the sign, the circle at the top, and the bars below. However, the design guidelines only allow for internal illumination of the graphic text and logos. Staff finds that the edges of the sign should not be illuminated. The application also includes a shingle sign on the 2nd Avenue facade, which staff finds meets all of the design guidelines for shingle signs. The application includes a painted sign on the 1st Avenue facade, and staff finds the proposed sign meets all of the design guidelines for painted signage. Staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions shown on the screen, and I won't read through all of them, but with those conditions, staff finds that the signage can meet the design guidelines for the 2nd Avenue Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. Happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well, if you have questions for him.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
The applicant like to come forward? Please give us your name and address.
Certainly. My name is Dave Zellman, Vice President of Architecture Design for Live Concepts. My address is 601 East Pratt Street, Baltimore, Maryland. I just want to say something to begin with. I personally have served on historic conservation boards for about 15 years up to this date. I'm a little jealous. Working with Joseph is a level of professionalism with staff that, frankly, we never had in the various boards that I've served on. So congratulations. It's been quite a pleasure. I want to talk a little bit about what we were trying to do with this projecting sign on the front of the building, realizing that all 10 provisions here apply to that sign. First and foremost, what we looked at is the typology of the historic marquee that was part of the historic George Jones facility, which this building was prior to us coming in. And it seemed like a marquee that was unfinished. And when we looked at the signage that we want to do for the multiple concepts that we are building within this, we took the typology of a historic theater marquee sign and tried to bring that in a modern way that was sympathetic to what was there and create the vertical projecting element that you've seen in this proposal. Working with Joseph, what we did and the advisement we had was probably a bit overzealous, if I will, in terms of some of the proportion and scale. Further working with Joseph, what we have determined is that of the 10 provisions that are in this recommended report, what we want to do is bring the sign down slightly to meet 8 of the 10. So therefore, what we are asking this commission for today is to consider a variance on 2 of the 10 provisions. Specifically, provisions number 5 and 7. On number 5, what we would like to do is bring down the sign significantly. Having the entire sign below the sill of the 3rd level, frankly, just makes the thing a little stunted. We want to be able to raise it up slightly above that sill. I don't have an exact dimension, but perhaps we think it's about 18 inches to 2 feet. We would remain below the architectural elements. On the building, there is a limestone vertical projection, and then what we call a dot below that, which was another limestone decorative element, kind of a remnant of the Beaux-Arts that was done in the 1920s when this building was built. We will not interfere with those. We will be below that. Since the sign is a medallion that's round on top, that medallion will not touch those architectural elements. And again, we're going to bring it down significantly from what you see in this proposal. So we would like the commission to consider that. It still would be taller than the guidelines allow, so we would need that variance. The second element is the edges of the projecting sign shall not be illuminated. Again, with the idea that we are trying to evoke a historic marquee, we feel that it's additive to allow those edges to be illuminated. Now, we did a recessed illumination, again, kind of a modern interpretation. We were actually a little surprised by this one because there are 4 signs within visual range that also have edge-lit conditions. Now, those are done with a neon or a faux neon, so we were thinking maybe it's the way we did the application rather than the illumination, but was not clear. We would like to ask for the variance to allow for the illumination. If the type of illumination is an issue and a faux neon was more appropriate, we're happy to do that rather than the recessed lighting that we're showing in our proposal. So that being said, that's what we would like the commission to consider this afternoon. And I would be available for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Open public hearing. Anyone wish to speak on behalf of this project? Close public hearing. Okay, commissioners?
I have a question for staff on number 7, which is the edges of the sign shall not be illuminated. The applicant referenced other signs in the area with a faux neon. Can you address that?
Yes, so the guidelines do allow for neon, like you could have neon around the edges or for highlighting lettering or accents. But this is internal illumination, and so the guidelines only allow for internal illumination of text and logos, but not of just kind of accents around the edges. So if they wanted to use neon there, I think that would be something that would be appropriate and meet the guidelines, but it's that internal illumination that was the problem. Yeah.
And I seem to understand that the applicant was willing to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Joseph, could you stay up?
Sure.
Well, maybe this is for the property owner. You wanted the sign to be below the third floor.
Below the window sills of the
windowsills.
third story.
So, do you have any idea, how far up is he, sir, the property owner, how far up are you talking about putting it above the windowsill? Inches, feet?
I'm going to suggest you come up to the podium.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks.
Again, I don't have an exact dimension, but I believe, and if I'm looking at the third floor windowsill, and I'm happy to pass this around, I believe we're approximately 18 to 24 inches. I haven't measured exactly.
So like 2 feet?
Yeah, exactly. Again, trying to miss that medallion and rondelle.
Thank you.
One more clarification from the applicant. I'm looking at that stone square medallion there. So you're saying that the sign would be below that stone medallion?
That is correct. Yes.
When you talk about stone medallion, are you talking?
I think he's talking about this.
There's the dot.
No,
The dot?
The dot.
Do you have any?
Can you pull up the
photograph?
If it would
That
be
doesn't look like
helpful,
it's
I do
below.
have something to pass around that does
No, it's
show the
not.
dot, if that's
It's
permissible.
on page 6.
Okay.
Yeah, page 6.
Don't have a greater technical term for the dot.
If I could, I'd like to add a couple of notes too. There was discussion on the last project about setting precedent, and there were reasons for not following the guidelines exactly because the lot was different. There's nothing about this building that's different enough that would mean that it couldn't follow those guidelines, that it be below those windowsills. And the other concern with the edge lighting is that this is now another component on top of this marquee. And so this one element that's not historic and maybe shouldn't have been approved back in the day is now getting bigger and more.
I'm sympathetic to all those reasons, and I'm also not real comfortable approving something that's being changed on the fly in the middle of our meeting. I'm thoroughly convinced with Joseph's report and recommendations, and I understand why the sign as proposed is not appropriate and does not meet the design guidelines. So, I'm not convinced by I appreciate the applicant's willingness to compromise on most of the guidelines, but I think we're not quite there yet, and that's where I am.
I'm on the same opinion as Commissioner Price because, Broadway, Second Avenue, that area is a business district. So if we decide to sway, away from the design guideline, who knows what's next proposal might be, and we will be amending on the fly. So I don't feel comfortable. So my recommendation will be if we disapprove this or approve with all the Joseph's condition, that would be great. Or if applicant wanna consider us new design, they have to withdraw today and then bring back the new proposal. But as of today, I think Joseph's recommendation with the guideline is appropriate. So I am comfortable approving with all the conditions.
Any other comments? Would you like to make that into a motion, Commissioner Johnson?
On 128 Second Avenue, I make a motion to approve with all the conditions as recommended by the staff.
Second by Commissioner Williams. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 1520 McKenzie Avenue.
Okay. 1520 McKinney Avenue is an application for infill development. The existing structure is non-contributing as it dates from the 1950s. MHCC staff issued an administrative permit for its demolition. The entire block, actually, of the 1500 block of McKinney is all considered to be non-contributing. There are not any historic structures. It's kind of like a dead end part of McKinney. So here are some of the images of the non-contributing structures on the block. And then the commission in the past has approved two infills. 1515 was approved in 2015 and 1519 was approved in 2019. We, in terms of since there isn't much historic context, we kind of looked at the larger historic context as well as the previously approved infills for determining whether or not what would be appropriate here on the site. So here's the proposed site plan. The project meets all the base zoning setbacks, and the proposed driveway does extend to the rear of the property, which was appropriate because there is no alley, so there's no way to get to the property, to vehicular access except for the driveway. Staff is recommending that there be at least one walkway leading from the street to the porch. There can be one or two, depending upon what the applicant wishes. Here is the front facade. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories, with a height of 30 feet and a width of 36 feet. This is in keeping with the larger historic context and with the other infill houses approved on this block. Here are the side elevations. Staff finds that overall the form, fenestration pattern, materials, and orientation meets the design guidelines. Staff does recommend that all paired windows have a 4 to 6 inch mullion between them. That's a standard condition. It's just these drawings aren't detailed enough to show that. And that all windows have a nominal 4-inch trim around them, which again is standard, but these drawings don't include those details. So we want to make sure that that's done in construction. So I won't read all of our conditions, but we're recommending approval with our standard conditions and with the information about adding a walkway and window trim and mullions. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Is he or not?
Don't see the applicant here. So it's an open public hearing. Anyone is the applicant? Do you want to speak? Okay, thank you. Open public hearing. Anyone want to speak regarding this project? Closed public hearing. Commissioners?
Well, seeing that there's seeing that there is no one that here that objects to the staff recommendations, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendations for 1520 McKinney Avenue.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Cotton. So any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so 3130 McGavick Pike is the Two Rivers Mansion. It is owned by the Metro Parks Department, and it's an individual landmark. The site includes two primary historic structures, the Italianate Two Rivers Mansion, which dates to 1859, and the federal 1802 house, which may or may not be from 1802. I won't go into that. The proposal is to construct an events pavilion behind the historic structures on the lot at a lower elevation. The historic site is open for tours and for public events and is also available to rent for private events like weddings. The proposed events pavilion will allow even more events to be held at the site and will help reduce wear and tear on the interior of the mansion. So here's a zoomed in version of the site plan showing the location of the events pavilion in relation to the historic structures. The pavilion will be located behind the mansion in an area that MHCC archaeologist Adam Fracchia and students from MTSU have surveyed for archaeological resources. It's really exciting that we have an archaeologist on staff now. Staff recommends that additional archaeological subsurface excavation and monitoring be conducted as determined in conjunction with our archaeologists as part of the project. So here are some elevations of the events pavilion. And the proposed materials are brick and metal siding with some wood accents, which staff finds will be a nice complement to the historic structure, but not detract from it. So here's some just overall images. Overall, we find the height, scale, materials, location, and overall design of the pavilion are appropriate for the historic site and meet the design guidelines. This project's been in the works for many years, so it's exciting to see it go forward. So overall, staff is recommending approval with our standard conditions. And the applicants are here.
Okay. If you'll give us your name and address as you speak.
Sure thing. Hi, my name's Brittany Hodge, 1883 Coles Ferry Pike, 37087. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. My name's Brittany Hodge. I'm project architect with EOA Architects. Our team's kind of been leading the design effort for the event pavilion at 3130 McGavick Pike. Since 2017, our team has kind of had the pleasure of collaborating with Metro Parks and Recreation, as well as the Friends of Two Rivers Mansion, to develop a vision for the new event center that would sort of fulfill a need for communal space within Donaldson that feels like it's lacking at the moment. In that vision, we've really prioritized the preservation and celebration of the historic structures on site, as well as the minimization of site and landscape disturbances. In addition to these two priorities, we've also focused on materiality that really integrates the historic materials and textures that are present on site, while also introducing materials that are evocative of agricultural structures. We envision this pavilion really as a timeless intersection of yesterday and today, and know that its addition to the site is really going to continue the preservation and celebration of this key landmark in Nashville's history. So in terms of kind of the prescribed conditions that you've set, we really have no issue with providing those materials as the project progresses. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. And open public hearing. Give us your name and address, please, sir.
I'm Phil Claiborne. I live at 2911 Western Hills Drive. And I have to confess there's a degree of excitement for my being here today to speak to you on the approval of this. I served as a councilman for Donaldson, Two Rivers area from 2007 to 2015. And in 2010, I incorporated the Friends of Two Rivers as a nonprofit organization with the mission statement to focus on the protection, the preservation, the restoration, and the promotion of Two Rivers Mansion and its history. At that time, the mansion had significant structural issues, And I was fortunate to be able to work with the mayor's office. And through 2 budget cycles, we were able to approve enough capital dollars to address all of the issues and return the mansion to its former glory. And from that time, it has been my goal and my dream to have an event center in the backwoods behind the mansion. Our partnership with Metro Parks allows the Friends Group to manage the site. That includes having it open for tours, public events, festivals, as well as private functions like weddings, family reunions, business meetings, and so on. Completion of this facility will allow for a state-of-the-art location for newlyweds to have an elegant wedding site. It will provide the district council member with a convenient location to host community meetings, something I never had. It will create an atmosphere, a retreat atmosphere for Metro departments to conduct training and informational meetings. And perhaps most importantly, it will allow the mansion to rest from the foot traffic associated with current events. It will give the Friends Group an opportunity to transition the mansion to a true house museum where the history of the property and the Harding-McGavick families can be told in context with visitors and student groups. EOA architectural firm is to be complimented on their ability to create this design of a modern barn-like structure that is compatible with the existing mansion and 1802 house. It will be situated in such a way as to create a events mall that slopes gently from the main structures down toward the open porch of the center and create a natural amphitheater for musical performances. EOA has listened attentively to the ideas that have been offered by the Friends Group, and the incorporation of materials like brick and stone have successful in mirroring the materials of the historic structures on the site. So I think this project is a win-win for the Friends Group at Two Rivers. It is a win-win for Metro Parks, and it is a win-win for the Historic Commission. But perhaps most importantly, it is a win for multitudes of people who will be able to enjoy this space for years to come. So I urge you to accept the staff recommendation and to vote for the approval of this new construction of an event space at Two Rivers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your service, Ms. Councilman. Anyone else wish to speak regarding this project? Closed public hearing. Commissioners?
I have a disclosure to make. My company and coworkers are working on this project, and the part about additional archaeological survey and monitoring, that's my coworkers are going to be working on that. So I believe I need to recuse myself from this. Fortunately, I don't think that'll make a difference for our quorum or the chances of this great project happening, but that's where I am. Am I right about that, Ann?
That all sounds appropriate. Thank you.
Good. Thanks. Commissioner Cotton?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you, Councilmember Claiborne. I mean, what a long journey I know you've undertaken with this, and thank you for your efforts to preserve the mansion. My parents live 2 blocks from there. We go to events there all the time. This is so needed, and it'll be a great just continuation of the legacy that you've set there and that Metro Parks has worked on. And so as a former member of, or former president of a Friends Group, I know the effort it takes. And so we're always excited to see our sister parks achieve something like this. So well done. Thank you. I'm excited to vote for this.
Comments?
Yes, I'd like to make comment of this beautiful design. I think this pavilion is really complement historic structure and utilizing the topography in a maximum advantage, and really appreciate a thoughtful design. And also, I'd like to echo Commissioner Cotton's comment about District Councilmember Claiborne. It takes that kind of, person's commitment and effort to come us, this stage, because it's not easy to just keep going and sometimes discouraging, try to get funding. And I'm extra proud and thankful applicant is Metro Park, and it means a lot. So with enthusiasm, I would like to support this project.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I make motion to 3130 McGavock Pike, Two Rivers site, approved with the staff condition.
Second from Commissioner Cotton. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great. Motion carries. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Okay. So are we down to Shelton Avenue, 1431 Shelton Avenue? This came off the consent agenda.
Yes, so 1431 is also a landmark. This property is known as Ivy Hall and is kind of doubly landmarked. It's part of the Inglewood Place neighborhood conservation zoning overlay, and it's an individual landmark. The structure was individually listed as well in the National Register of Historic Places in 1995. It's a Tudor Revival style house, and it was designed by the renowned Nashville architect Edwin Keeble. In addition to being on the National Register and an individual landmark and part of the conservation overlay, it's also something called a neighborhood landmark, which is actually a planning tool, and that'll come up in terms of the use. So the historic structure is kind of unusual in that it's located at the rear of the lot with a deep front yard and a shallow rear yard. There's an existing outbuilding on the property. The National Register of Historic Places nomination form lists the existing garage as contributing and states that it was constructed at the same time as the main house. Staff did some significant research into this. We were not able to uncover a site plan. There are original blueprints for the house, but there was no site plan that we could find. Just background information. There is a Keeble archive collection. It's been given to TSLA, but it has not yet been processed or open to the public. So that's where we are. So we looked at the structure and the site, and staff believes that the structure was not built at the same time. It's a cheap cinder, not cheap, but it's a cinder block structure. And the materials, although they look similar to the materials of the historic house, are different when you look at their detailing, and seems to be kind of mimicking the house, but without the quality materials that was used on the historic house. In addition, the historic house, this is a copy of a portion of the original floor plan for the house. There was a garage built originally attached to Ivy Hall. It's still there, but it's been kind of enclosed as conditioned space. So staff believes that this was the original garage and that the other garage was built subsequently. So therefore, staff finds that the demolition of the existing garage meets the design guidelines. So here's the site plan. The new garage will be located in approximately the same location as the existing garage. It'll be about 960 square feet, which meets the design guidelines, which allow up to 1,000 square feet. Again, because of the odd deep front setback and shallow rear yard, it's not necessarily behind the historic structure as we would typically see. And another unusual aspect is that there is a pergola that they're proposing that connects the garage to Ivy Hall. Staff does find that to meet the design guidelines in this case, just because, again, it's located so far back, it's not going to be as visible, and that there's not really much of a rear yard to put kind of a pergola or covered structure there. And yeah. And so here's just an up close of the floor plan. It's meeting the base zoning setbacks. And then the kind of, and also a pergola structure is open on, all the sides. It just has a nominal roof on top of it. So we felt that attaching the two structures was appropriate in this instance. Here are the elevation drawings. The structure is, let me just look at it's under 25 feet, which is what we would allow. It is 24 feet 7 inches from grade with a wall height of 11 feet 6 inches. Its dormers are inset appropriately and are less than 14 feet wide when you add them all up together. So overall, the height, scale, material, setbacks, dormers, and overall design meets the design guidelines. And because I threw this in at the last minute, I forgot to add in a slide with the text of the recommendation, so I will just read that out quickly. We are recommending approval of the project with the condition that we approve all materials and that staff approve any additional site changes or permanent landscape features prior to construction.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would like to come forward and speak? Please give us your names and addresses.
My name is Rachel McCann, And my husband, Josh Gray, and I have owned and lived at Ivy Hall for 10 years. I'm an architectural historian. I taught the history of architecture for 30 years, and my husband and I understand the importance, the historic importance of Ivy Hall and the importance of its character. We also understand the importance of being good neighbors. We believe that the replacement garage will be more in keeping with the architectural quality of the house and will improve the historic quality of the property, and we'd like to let our architect speak to those particulars.
Ben Chandler with Daniels Chandler Architect. We're at 611 Commerce Street, Suite 2712 in downtown Nashville, 37203. Just to kind of harken back to what Rachel and Josh had just spoken about, the goal of this project was really to create a structure that respected the existing aesthetic of the home, this kind of Tudor revivalist house, in the mid-30s, and really pay attention to those details that made the house something special other than the time that it was created. You can tell from the elevations really tie in with the materials used, timber frame, kind of trim detailing throughout, plaster, looking into the roof using a clay shake roof, and we're willing to work with Metro's Historic's recommendations on getting all of those approved to match the existing house materials as best we can, if not perfectly. So, but outside of that, the goal was to respect the existing house. Since there's already a garage there that was deemed as it does not, the character of it does not play into the kind of significance of the existing house, removing that with the new structure and then creating a kind of public-private separation using the pergola. Since the house does function currently as a recording studio, creating more of a private patio space kind of on the rear, and using that the garage and structure as kind of that end cap there to create that edge. Let's see. Yeah, and that's really all we had for that. Just really wanted to focus on doing the existing house justice and not to pull away from it, but to try to match as best we can there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding this project? Yes, come forward, please. If you'll give us your name and address, please.
Sure thing. My name is Dan Benningfield. I live at 1426 Shelton Avenue. Hello, neighbors. I don't know if this is the proper place for it, but I was just curious I have two questions to ask about it. Was there going to be living space above the garage? Was that incorporated into the build?
Shall I stand up
and? Those questions, you can direct them to the commission. The commission can in turn question the applicant.
Sure, yeah, that'd be good. If you just direct them to us, then we'll.
Okay, I'm just curious about if there's living space above the garage.
Sure.
I appreciated Councilwoman Benedict, excuse me, trying to assure us about short-term rental. I had an issue with your neighbor. Thankfully, that's no longer happening. And the other question I have was, I don't know what it means when it means removed from consent, because this was the only one of the agenda that was, I was just curious about that.
Sure, I can help you with that. Okay. We have a consent agenda for projects that generally don't have any controversy or objection that's been raised to it. But before we actually approve those projects, we open it up to the public, and either a commissioner or the public can ask that it be removed from the consent agenda so the discussion can be fully vetted before the approval's made, or denial, whichever case it might be. So that was the only reason for the consent agenda. The consent agenda are those projects that we haven't received any objection for.
Okay. Was there a particular disagreement with this project?
It was just a question that was raised, is all.
Oh, okay. All right.
The council member requested it taken off so she could speak to it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. So for the applicant, could you address the comment about the living space and what the conditions are there?
Yes, there is a living component built above to function as either an office or a space. There will be a full bath and kind of semi-walled off bedroom office space, as well as a sink and countertop in there for detached dwelling unit. To the council member Benedict's point, we will not, it's our understanding that we will not be using the space as a short-term rental. It is intended for family use when folks are in town, or as an office space when not being utilized by family.
And just as a reminder, the commission, you don't review use.
Yes.
So that's not part of the inter-discussion.
I think, in keeping with the council members, wishes, she wanted that to be part of the record, that it would not be used as a short-term rental. So,
sure.
Good, but you're right. But you're right, it's not our purview. So, okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Yes, please come forward. If you'll give us your name and address, please.
Yeah, Jesus Carrillo, I live at 1428 Shelton, one of the neighbors. I guess my concern is there's additional parking there in front of the garage. I don't mind the pad for the driveway and stuff, but you've got 4 additional spaces there. That's really my only other concern. Other than that, the build I think would be fine. That kind of, you guys are keeping it all up with the historic and everything like that. And I like
You
that.
can keep your questions, like your comments directed towards the microphones that you picked up and addressed to the commission thing.
Yeah, so anyway, I pretty much do like the build and everything like that because they're keeping it up with the integrity of the structure and everything like that. So, but like I said, my only concern is the 4 additional parking spaces in front of the garage. That's the only thing that's bothering me. So, okay.
So is your concern about the presence of the parking or the configuration?
The way what they're suggesting there, there's a pad in front of the new garage, and then there's 4 additional parking spaces, and that's kind of only my only concern, So, okay.
Thanks.
All right.
So for staff, any addressing the parking spaces, do they meet the guidelines and?
That is also outside of our purview.
Okay. Okay, close public hearing, commissioners.
Can I make the motion?
Let her start.
I'd like to make a motion with respect to 1431 Shelton Avenue, if there's no discussion, that we approve based off staff recommendations.
Second from Commissioner Johnson. Any other comment? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the Second Avenue Design Guidelines Revision. We have heard this twice before, and we had closed public hearing then, but we've had some additional comments. And as this is a serious issue worthy of its consideration, we would like to open the public hearing again and hear from anyone who wishes to speak on this subject.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and present real quick, if that's okay.
Good.
Just to give you a recap on that. So the thought was to potentially add 2 to 3 story rooftop additions. Right now, 1 story is allowed, does meet the guidelines. And so the thought is maybe to allow 2 to 3 total in somewhat of a hide it, you can have it type of situation. However, it would be able, obviously, to be seen from the other side of the river and from the pedestrian bridge. So one of the requests in the first hearing was to get some images to see what that was like. What would happen if absolutely everybody did that? And so you can see on Second Avenue, there isn't a huge impact. This is a view looking down Second and down from Broadway on down Second. And this is looking from the other direction. And this one's from Commerce. Again, this is just looking at it from across the street. But when you get to First Avenue, it's a little bit of a different story. Not so much if you're just considering across the street. Not a huge impact. But as you move to the roundabout, the dead end turnaround, you can see it more. So this is 1 story. This is 2. This is 3 with the required step backs. And then This is what you would see from the pedestrian bridge with 1, 2, and 3. And shall we open for public hearing now?
Yep, open for public hearing. You wish to speak on this project, please give us your name.
And I'll say too, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, go ahead and come on up, that you did get an email, but it came in just a couple of hours before the meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you had, everyone's nodding, so I think you've had a chance to read that.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dave Johnston, in office at 211 Union in the Stallman Building. And I'd like to mention, as an architect, I'll just read this. I did send you all a note a couple of weeks ago. With an office downtown in the area since 2000 and having the privilege of working with several property owners in the downtown area, I wanted to express or voice my support for the staff's recommendation to incentivize really the revitalization and preservation of the Second Avenue. Rising construction costs and the continued rise in the cost of real estate are making revitalizing these properties financially untenable. The timely approval of potentially adding 3 stories to these buildings, if compatible and differentiated from the historical character of the original, may provide just enough incentive for these properties to rebuild and begin the revitalization process. The size, scale, and massing of any new additions must be appropriately and subordinate and distinguishable from the original. This approach does seem to match the national standards for historic preservation. As we contemplate that experience for the First and Second Avenue view, it does have a minimal view, as you can see, and it's important to be able to establish that pedestrian activity down on the street. And finally, as we consider the view from across the river or from the bridge, it's important that we minimize the view of the AT&T building, which is probably the most stark piece that we have. So anything we can do to help minimize the impact from that view of that building and distinguish it from that, as we call the front porch of Nashville, would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that wish to speak regarding this project? Okay. Commissioners?
Just as a matter of formula, close public hearing.
Close public hearing, sure. And do we have a staff recommendation on this?
Yes, you do. We haven't updated it since the first presentation.
Could we find it and put it up on the screen? Would that be helpful for the commissioners?
Do you have a way to do that? I think so.
Okay. Commissioners, discussion?
I need to make a clarification of Betsy Williams called me this morning, and she's a very good friend of mine. She is associated with the Ray Building, and I told her before she even started that what my position was and that I couldn't discuss it with her. And so, but she went ahead and told me that she approved of it. And when I told her that I would have to disclose her call, then she said, well, I'm just going to write an email to the commission. And I said, well, people aren't probably going to have a chance to read it, and because there's not enough time. So basically, she sent an email to each of us individually. And did everybody see that? Everybody saw it? Okay, great. Then I won't reiterate it. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Thank you.
Well, this is a difficult subject, so I will start. I think I have not changed my position since June. I think it's as difficult as it is, from Second Avenue side, because mid setback and it's invisible. It's, clearly you cannot see from. But because of unique topography of Nashville, so hilly, so if you move along to the First Avenue or roundabout, you can see it. And especially, of course, the other side of the, pedestrian bridge. Probably, some may feel it's jarring because, oh my gosh, 3-story building of beautiful, 4-story, 5-story building. So it's quite changed. But I do understand, both growth and preservation. In order for us to preserve those rich history with beautiful architectural, rich building, I think we need to give to meet current trend and current opportunity for the person who owns the building to grow in that site, instead of trying to give opportunity. Well, it's not have any opportunity, so therefore I'm going to abandon it and not doing anything. So by providing really clear design guideline, and so I think it will kind of encourage preservation. So that, and all the setback, because first of all, they have to meet the setback. So if it does not meet the setback, there will be no addition. So it's up to the applicant to meet every single condition. And so I think just because we have those guidelines, it's not necessarily means every single building on the second avenue will have addition. So that presentation, PowerPoint, picture we saw is if every single building was developed. So that's what we will see. But in reality, we will see one building goes up and then, next building goes up. So we will see kind of not everything, 3-story uniformly. So with that, I think meets a guideline. I think it's a great compromise for preservation and growth. And so therefore, I am in support of the staff recommendation.
Any other comments? Commissioner Williams?
I have some reservations. As I look at this project, I think about how we think about neighborhoods in general, right? We protect homes. We don't allow people to come in and run roughshod over neighborhoods. We monitor every single addition closely. There's no room on 2nd Avenue to expand laterally, right? But now we're looking at additions or modifications that are going up or they're stacking up. So I'm wondering, and this is a question I'm grappling with, at what point do these additions make these buildings 21st century structures as opposed to 19th century structures or whenever they were built? I think we're going to have to watch the guidelines, whatever they may be, very closely on this. Because there's more than one way to view these communities, right? Like my community ain't historic by any means, but you get different views of it as you go into it. Same thing with this on 2nd Avenue. You might not can see it from 2nd Avenue walking down the street, but everybody that's coming in from East Nashville is going to see something that ain't going to look quite like Nashville. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks for waiting 2 additional months. Sorry I wasn't here last month to do this. And thank you very much to the staff for making the renderings. That's very helpful. I also continue to be skeptical about this. I went and read, I'm not saying I'm immediately opposed to it. I just want to raise issues that I think need to be raised. I read the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rooftop Additions memo, and I don't want to, I know 3 months ago when we first talked about it, we were talking about the phrasing of generally shouldn't exceed 1 story. I don't want to belabor that anymore. But I am, first of all, let me back up. I understand the economic arguments for allowing this, and I think that some sort of additions on the rooftops of these buildings should be allowed, and we do need to grapple with that and figure out how to do it. That said, I'm not sure how we catapulted from 1 story to 3. Like, why do we skip 2? Or why not 4? Like what, it seems, I don't understand, the generally should not, in no instance shall a rooftop addition exceed 3 stories. I don't understand what analysis we got to 3.
I can help with that.
Okay.
And it's not a historic analysis, it was a base zoning analysis. So a lot of those buildings are 3 stories. And so the amount that they're allowed by base zoning is 6. So if there was nothing there, they could go up to 6. So that was the thought when we started this discussion about could there be more, how much more? And so we went through base zoning. So it's not a historic analysis, it's more of a base zoning.
Okay. That's good context. So, I mean, we could potentially, I mean, if we think about neighborhood review that we do on houses, it's written in the guidelines that additions should not more than double the square footage of a home. Is that also taken into, I mean, if for the 3-story buildings, you're adding another 3 stories, are we going to be potentially doubling the size of those buildings?
That guideline's not in the downtown overlays, like Broadway, Second. and
Right,
downtown.
because I guess this wasn't considered, it wasn't even known to be a possibility when they were written properly, because there's nowhere to go laterally, like Commissioner Williams said.
But to your point, though, to your question, if with the setbacks that we have that are dictated, if it was a 3-story building, you couldn't double it because of the setbacks. You can't build the same square footage. So if you built 3
Point
floors,
taken.
they would be small. They would all be smaller, and for the 4- and 5-story buildings, it'd be even less percentage than that.
I appreciate that, and I understand. So that's helpful. One more quick comment, and then I'll let others speak. To Commissioner Johnson's point that it's not likely that we're going to see wall-to-wall 3-story additions. I don't know that we can really say that. Who's to say what's going to be in 50 years from now? I don't know that when the guidelines for rooftop additions for bars along Broadway that we necessarily, or the commission at the time necessarily knew that every single property would go for a rooftop addition for a bar. And they've been troublesome from time to time. Anyway, I just raised these concerns that are knocking around in my head for Second Avenue, which is such an important part of our historic city. And I'm just concerned about unintended consequences down the road of what we might do to rely on, as Robin said, an analysis for the height here that's not necessarily based on Secretary of Interior standards or preservation best practices as I understand them. So that's it for now. Thank you.
So I'll just weigh in and say I'm still pretty hesitant as well. I mean, I appreciate that you can't see it from Second Avenue, appreciate it that you really can't see it from First, but I mean, I hate the word activate, but activate the East Bank, it'll be glaringly visible from everything across the river. And these are such a treasured and historic part of our downtown. And once we do this, there's no going back. So, to double the height of a 3-story building to 6, even with the setback, to me, just seems visually arresting, at least. So yeah, I don't think I'm quite there yet.
I'd really like to hear from Commissioners Stewart and Mayhall as a local resident stakeholder who's been involved with the district for as long as you have. And Cyril, I think you've been part of the working group for Second Avenue following the bombing, right? So I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, I can't say that this hasn't caused me a great deal of angst. I moved down to Second Avenue in 1984 and fell in love with it, and that has been the basis of my preservation work my whole life. I've also lived one street off on the other side of AT&T, so I also experienced the bombing, and a lot of my friends were impacted to a great degree. I've been associated with the district for 35 years that believes that economic development is the best way to save the building. So I see your point. I guess I just have to say I'm not so concerned about the view across the river because I think it's going to be different materials and it probably will look like it's on the other side of Second Avenue. And I see your point about it kind of stepping up to the AT&T building because that's, even though it looks better now than it did, I see that point. So I'm torn. Is what it is. It's I'm here. I really wanted to hear from all my other commissioners to help me make a decision today. And so I don't have an answer at this point. Sarah?
You know, in my history, I mean, for most of my 45-year history, I've dealt with buildings that are multi-story and some older historic buildings. And we've always said, well, gosh, you know, we don't have enough money to do it now. We'll add a floor later. And I've never found that it made any economic sense to add one floor to a building. It just, the cost was so prohibitive. I suspect that in today's economy, you could, you know, that's probably worse than it ever has been before. That's even more cost prohibitive. In these buildings, adding 2 or 3 stories to the building means going all the way down through the floor, putting in new footings. And I mean, there's a tremendous amount of work and disruption. So I'm not sure that everybody's going to do this, but they might. I mean, you know, that's always a possibility. I do find comfort that for any of these additions, they will go through the same scrutiny and requirement to adhere to the guidelines for materials and scale and all that. And the staff and the commission will review any of these additions that come along. So that gives me comfort. If this was 2 stories, I would say absolutely, because I know that with 2 stories, then you've got another apparent story from the mechanical units that sit on top that don't require screening, that's probably going to be more of an eyesore than the building itself would be. And the argument for not doing screening is that then makes it look like another floor, because you do have to have a lot of distance around the equipment if you have screening. So I am torn as well. Like I said, I'm totally comfortable with 2 stories. I think that's a good number. 3 gives me a little bit of pause, but by the same token, you know, to Commissioner Johnson's point, you know, these are buildings that have struggled. They have had a catastrophic event happen, and I think incentivizing the rebuilding of this street, it's all torn our hearts out to walk up Second Avenue and see so many empty, you know, buildings that don't apparently have anything going on with them. So I think anything that we can do to incentivize that. I don't know that 2 stories and 3 stories is a huge difference. I really appreciate the staff's work to come up with these drawings, because what matters on Second Avenue is what happens when you're on the street. And I think the same will be true of Third. When you're across the river at the Titan Stadium, I mean, the whole skyline has changed so drastically. I'm not sure that 1 floor difference on this is a major difference. So those are some of my thoughts.
I'm pretty torn as well. I understand all the economic arguments for it, and I agree. And those people have been through quite a lot on Second Avenue, but I'm a little bit like Commissioner Stewart. 3 stories just tends to give me pause. So I'm torn as well.
I have a question to the staff. I know you gave us rendering. So how many percentage of the building will be qualified for the 3 stories addition? Because I know it does first story, you do have 30 foot, 10 feet, 15 feet, those, dimensional setback. And then second story, you have to meet invisibility test, further add another setback. And third story, I'm assuming further add another, setback. So with that, do you have a calculation how many buildings, which building might be qualify those tests?
All of those on the east side would qualify, as the rendering showed. The west side, not really sure, probably could not meet those requirements because those buildings aren't as deep.
The base zoning is is 6 stories.
It's 6 on the interior and 7, I believe, on the corners.
Okay. So then a 4-story building wouldn't be able to go to 3.
It doesn't specify it that way, but that would be something that you would review. Or we could change it to say that.
Well, but then we would be reviewing potentially 3 stories on an already 4-story building, so that would get into a base zoning call that we don't necessarily review. That makes sense.
Actually, in terms of height, you do review that. In terms of base zoning, you do review setbacks and height. Okay. So that is something you could allow, but if the commission decides they do want to vote for this, you can make that change. You can make any change, and of course, you can deny the whole thing.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I do think it's important that we make a decision. We've been working on this for 3 months. We have building owners that are on pause, waiting for this decision to influence what they're going to be doing. So I think I'm intrigued by the base zoning correlation. And so, Robin, if an applicant comes to us and is exceeding the base zoning, is that the same as a side zoning setback that we have the ability to review and determine?
You could, or we could change the draft language to say that you can't exceed the base zoning.
I think given Commissioner Stewart's thoughts and also all of the information and public feedback that we've received, and that we do continue, this body will continue to have review authority, and that I'm comfortable as I'm going to be in saying that I could approve this recommendation.
How does the commission feel that we put Robin's change that she just mentioned, not to exceed base zoning of the stories? Is that viable?
I think having an absolute is more difficult. I mean, we are not reluctant to say base zoning is this, and we agree with that. Okay. But having the ability to make an exception if we thought it was appropriate, but it would require, the full commission to feel like that was appropriate to be able to do that. So, Commissioner Price?
The 3 stories gives me angst. And I appreciate what you said, that the 2 stories feels better. And it feels better to me. 2nd Avenue is going to be the most beautiful street in all of Nashville when they complete this renovation of this street. We already see one big project, wonderful project, the George Jones coming in. I have a feeling that we're going to be inundated with a huge amount of attention, and especially with Mayor Cooper and the commission's, the council's emphasis on riverfront development for the first time. I mean, it's just awesome to me. I just have a feeling that it's going to turn into an economic powerhouse down there faster than we think. And so, as I consider everyone's comments here, what resonated with me was Commissioner Stewart's support of a two-story addition. It just feels more comfortable, and 3 stories just tends to me, it's going to look like 4 with the mechanicals on top. I appreciate what you said, and so that is what that's where I'm leaning right now.
And I'll join in that. I think I'm probably a firm no on the 3, but 2 stories makes it more livable for me. And I'm assuming if we limit it to 2 stories, it's still reviewable by us as a commission if someone wants to exceed it.
If someone wants to exceed 2 stories?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, that's possible. I mean, anyone can bring anything they want to you. I think that even though you don't mean this as an entitlement, it will be considered an entitlement. I think people will assume, everyone will assume they can have 3. So I think that is kind of safe to say 2. And then I, just thinking out loud, added the language, so the sentence right now says additional full or partial stories may be possible if they meet all other design guidelines. And then I snuck in there, do not exceed the number of stories allowed by base zoning. And then what's already there, and are also designed and located to be invisible, blah, blah, blah.
So, yeah, just to conclude, I guess my thought, I'm probably a firm no at 3, but I can go along with 2, I think.
Is that a motion?
That's a good question. So in regards to, oh yeah, that'd be great.
Additional full or partial stories may be possible if they meet all other design guidelines, do not exceed the number of stories allowed by base zoning, and are also designed and located to be invisible from any point across the street on 2nd Avenue and from across the street on 1st Avenue for buildings on the east side of the street. And then there's more language about doing a skeletal mock-up.
Mm-hmm. And so potentially we would have a motion here to where we're saying we really want to see no more than 2, but you can bring us additional under those certain conditions.
Anyone can always bring
Right,
anything they
understood.
want to you. So you don't
But
even
I
have
appreciate
to-
your comment about seeing this as an entitlement, because that's what I'm afraid of, that it
Yeah.
will be seen as an entitlement. But this gives us the flexibility to still allow for a third stories. Okay, thank you, I'm talking out loud.
So one other question, you mentioned the mock-up. Are we allowing a digital mock-up versus a physical mock-up?
The current draft requires a physical mock-up.
I think it was Commissioner Price that mentioned the expense of doing that. I mean, especially if we're looking at a 3-story, that's a huge expense.
It is, and with the software that you guys use these days, I'm comfortable with digital renderings if we wanted to change that language. And that may open up a whole new can of worms that we haven't discussed yet, so.
Robin, do you have feelings about that?
That was following the National Park Service's recommendation, some research we've done in other cities. And there is a building right now that's not in the overlay, but is in the downtown area, well, is now in the downtown overlay, where they did that themselves. Not because they had to, obviously, they weren't in the overlay at that point, but just because they wanted an idea of how well their addition could be seen.
I will say, having put up poles for a 1-story school relocation, I can say it's a challenge. And especially when you look at something that can, withstand winds and storms and not fall off the building. And so I would recommend that we evaluate that and see if we could go with a digital just for the feasibility of it. But we don't have to include that today. So motion? Do we have a motion?
Just for the clarification, if we don't have to include it, I think current language says actual physical mock-up, so we need to strike out that section to switch to digital.
So what do you think, Robin?
Yes, if you want to change it, we do need to change it now.
Okay. So, okay. Yep. So that works with me. Is everybody okay, comfortable with that? Okay.
So my suggestion is leave as is, and then can we add in place of the physical structure, the digital drawing? We will accept this as drawing in place of the physical structure with the language in that regard. Would that work?
Or do you want to just take it out altogether and do that as a matter of policy?
I mean, if anybody want to do the physical, we don't, stop that. So,
But I think having the requirement for at least a digital is important. Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion?
So just to clarify, we're taking out the requirement for the physical and making it a digital. Okay, just so I'm clear.
I'll make the motion, but there's been a lot of language changed and added here, so it's difficult for me to know exactly what to say. I will move that for the Second Avenue design guideline revisions, that we approve the staff recommendation to allow for two-story additions on meeting all other design guidelines as presented to us today. With the, how do I say that the rest of this?
How about move to approve with the conditions that Section 5 be revised in 3 ways? The number of stories allowed cannot exceed base zoning. The maximum number of stories is 2. And the physical mock-up be changed to a digital rendering.
I believe that captures our discussion here today.
Good. Do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Williams. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No. All opposed? Motion carries. Good. Thank you. So that concludes our official business. We do have a training session coming up, but I'm going to adjourn the official meeting so that we can then have the training session and let the IT guys close down and go home. Yeah, anyone who is physically present is welcome to stay, but we'll let the IT guys go home. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.